Hello, my name is Isaiah, also known as Zay Knives. Today, I'm going to be forging a chef's knife, but not just any chef's knife. It's going to be made of Damascus steel. And if you didn't see my last video, I actually made this bar of Damascus steel with 2 strikers right here in my forge. So if you haven't seen it, make sure you go check it out. The link for it will be in the description. The first thing we got to do is get the forge started so we can get cranking on this piece. Alright, so now that we got the fire started, I wanted to go into a little bit more detail about the steel we're using. So last video, we made this half raindrop pattern interrupted by ladder pattern Damascus steel. Now it's 72 layers, and what I mean by raindrop interrupted by ladders, so what I did is I did raindrop pattern, so I drilled holes for that raindrop pattern effect, and then I carved a groove in for the ladder pattern, and then I did raindrop pattern, another groove for ladder, raindrop, ladder. So it's alternating back and forth between raindrop pattern and ladder pattern Damascus steel. When it comes to making the Damascus steel, the ends always fray and they don't forge weld correctly. So the very first thing I'm going to do is just cut off the very end of the steel, and this will just make sure that any parts of the end that are not welded together correctly don't end up popping and tearing the entire piece apart. Alright, so I'm getting ready to take the piece out right now. The first thing I'm going to do is knock the corners back so it doesn't fish mouth as we draw it out. I have to be extremely careful to only work this steel as hot as possible. The second we lose our white, yellow forging heat, it needs to go back in the fire because I don't want these welds to split or break. So I use the horn to draw out the point because it's much more efficient. So at this point, I have the preform to 7 inches, just like I wanted. Now it's still really thick, but what we're going to do now is start our transition between the blade and the tang, and then we'll start widening out that blade. You'll use a half-face blow to start that transition. See, I make a mark, check, make a mark, check. Guess approximately how much steel we'll need. I've made quite a few kitchen knives in my day, so I got a little experience. Alright, so we'll leave that be the way it is for right now, so we got something to grip onto while we work on the rest of the blade. So we're going to cross peen out the width. So using the cross peen hammer to add width to these kitchen knives, it serves a dual purpose. It brings the width out, it gets just a little bit more length, and it thins it down substantially. So we can actually forge the blade to the thickness that we want the end product to be. I learned this technique from journeyman smith Nick Rossi at the New England School of Metalwork. He teaches a couple different kitchen knife classes that you can take there. The link to the website will be in the description of the video. Straighten everything out. Alright, let's see what we can do about putting a little curvature in this blade. It's a little difficult. I want a little bit more than that, because there's a lot of steel on the edge that needs to get hammered down. That looks much better. There we go. That's about what we want. So now back in the fire, start hammering in the edge bevel. So I've mentioned this in a previous video, but hammering in the edge bevel is one of the trickiest things to do when you first start. So what I'm going to do is lay the blade flat, put it up at a slight angle, right on the edge of an anvil, and then hammer in the edge. Flip it around. So the edge is hammered in all the way from heel to tip, but you can see there's just a bit of an upswept curve to it. So now I'm going to heat the whole blade up, flip it up like this, and just hammer that curve downwards. You can see how bad that wrinkles the edge. And it's really, really not good to do that. It puts a lot of stress on the blade, but we have no choice. Especially this Damascus steel. Alright, I'm going to heat it back up because I don't want to form any cracks or anything on the inside. Pretty good to me. Pretty good and straight. We're really, really thin here, so we got to be very careful moving forward. But I'm going to stick it in, draw out that tang. Okay, let's begin the transition. That looks pretty good and straight to me. Sweet. So now we have this giant chef's knife forged out. So now what I'm going to do is let it cool down really slowly to a red temperature. I'm going to do this twice on both the blade and the tang and let it cool off in the air. So this process is called normalizing the steel. So what this is going to do is this is going to refine the grain of the steel inside, shrinking it, making it smaller, also reducing the stress built up from the forging and the high heat of making the Damascus steel. This is going to allow the blade to harden without warping or cracking later on. So you can see it's at a dull red. I'm going to put this in the vise, let it cool off in the air. Alright, so I finished my normalization cycles on the blade. It's all forged out, straightened to where I want it. So now I'm going to go through with some soapstone and start drawing on my design that I want to profile the blade to. We got this thing forged, profiled. Now we're ready to heat treat. I really like this shape. This came out really awesome. It's very sleek. Looks like it's gonna be a great, like, all-around, all-purpose knife. Good for chopping. Gonna be good for slicing. So what I'm gonna do now is I want to just straighten out the tang. I don't like that there's a curve in it. So I'm gonna straighten out the tang, and then we're gonna get this blade heat treated. ZAY. Alright, so this is Parks 50 heat treating oil. What I'm going to do is heat the blade up to critical temperature where it's no longer magnetic and quench the blade in this oil. So I got the blade in there. I'm going to keep the blade moving. Take it out, check it. I'm also going to be checking it with a magnet to see when it loses its magnetivity, because that's how we know we're very close to heat treating temperature. It's lost its magnetivity. I'm gonna get ready to go in for the heat treat. Here we go. So the knife is finished being tempered, so let's start to grind in the edge. So I got a little bit into polishing the blade before I realized that I forgot a step. That's actually pretty crucial into making a really fine working kitchen knife. And that is to, before you polish the knife over, to roll the bottom of the edge into almost a sharp edge. And then we polish over that, and then once you resharpen it again, it'll be deadly sharp. Alright, so I'm all through to 500 grit on both sides. The blade has been polished. So now it's time to get it in the etch so we can see that Damascus pattern. This right here is what's called ferric chloride acid. This is going to etch the steel and bring out that beautiful Damascus pattern. Ugh. Now what I'm going to do is go over the blade with 1200 grit sandpaper. This is going to make that 15N20 almost mirror polish, and it's going to end up being a really nice finish. And then I have a secret to darken this steel. after we do that. Alright, so now I've polished the blade through to 1200 grit. So now I'm going to do a little secret. I'm going to take some instant coffee and I'm going to etch it in that. Let's mix that up with a knife. Alright, so I'm going to let that sit for a couple hours and then we'll see what it looks like. Okay, so the blade has been soaking overnight in the instant coffee, and as you can see, it has a lot more contrast now. That dark steel etched real dark in the coffee where the 15N20 was untouched. This blade looks phenomenal. So I wanted to explain something before I moved on any further. This is a piece of brass. I use brass at the top of all my handles. I'm currently out of brass. This is just a scrap piece laying around that I wasn't able to use for some previous project, I don't remember what. Since I'm out of brass and I need to get this knife done, this actually fits on there like perfectly. So, pretty much skipping a step. But what I would do is I would take bar stock of brass, a rectangle, I'd cut it out, drill holes, 2 holes in it, file it so it's rectangled, and then till it fits perfectly on the blade. But this actually fits really well on this blade. And this is going to get ground down so small that it doesn't really matter that it doesn't fit it evenly right now. It'll get ground down later. So let's go choose the wood that we're going to use for the handle. This piece of Indian ebony. This is a piece of curly maple. I think this will be perfect. Mark where we want our holes drilled. Right here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to heat up the tang till it's red hot and then burn the wood onto the handles to fit it perfectly. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead now, get ready to glue these pieces up. Get a nice good bond. Okay, so I have the handle ground through the coarse 60 grit. Now I'm going to go through to 120 grit, grind out all those deep gouges, and then we'll go to hand sanding. I'm going to put a boiled linseed oil finish on the handle right now before I go any further to make sure that that handle doesn't get tarnished at all. Okay, so I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, and then we'll get the glue out of this seam right here, and then we'll sharpen this thing up, and then we're all done. Okay, so now we're going to put an edge on the knife, and then we'll do some cutting tests. Okay, let's cut up this water bottle. That was a clean cut. Okay, another challenger approaches. Oh my god. Let's see if we can cut, see if we can get another cut on it. Oh my god. Wow. See how it does. Just cutting up, do some simple paper cuts. Wow. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been forging this Damascus steel chef's knife. This thing is a beauty. If you never saw the part 1 to this series, where we actually forged this Damascus steel by hand right here in my forge, you can go check that one out. The link to that will be in the description. I've been uploading a video once a week, so make sure you subscribe to my channel and you hit the bell for notifications when I upload a video. Also, to follow me on social media, you can check out my Instagram page @ZayKnives, my Facebook page ZayKnives. If you're interested in buying anything or seeing the stuff that I have for sale, you can check out my website, zayknives.com. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll see you on the next video.